Hello, everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening to all the people logging in from across the world. I'm Pratigya Haran, and I invite you to the third of a series of 12 story sessions for adults at the Chennai Storytelling Festival 13th edition. As we can see, we have storytellers logging in from across the world, mostly from India, though. And we are going to start off our very first story. The first teller for the day is Ed Lewis. He's logging in from California, Sacramento. The story he's going to share is called Learning and Unlearning to Hate, a personal experience story. We welcome you, Ed, to our session. Please introduce yourself fully and share a story with us. Eric, could
All
you
right.
please spotlight him?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me again. I've enjoyed doing this I've done it three other times, I think. And it's always a pleasure to listen to all these great storytellers and participate. I am on the board of the Storytelling Association of California when we have 17 story swap groups in our organization. And then I'm in my local group, the Sacramento Storytellers Guild, and I'm on the board of that and really involved in the storytelling. I go to as many events as I can. And one of the nice things about this international grouping of people all over the world is you can write a new story, tell it in Montreal, tell it in India, tell it in California, and get feedback on some of those places. And you can workshop a story and really get it down to where, I figure for me, after about 8 times telling it, I'm pretty well versed in it and I've got feedback and I've made changes. So that's what I've done with this particular story, although this is a newer one. So here we go. It's called, like you said, Learning and Unlearning to Hate. I was carefully taught in the 1950s to hate by my father. By the age of 10, I was convinced that all Native American Indians were drunks, Mexicans were lazy, blacks were criminals, and the Japs, the Japanese, were to be feared because they had attacked us in World War II. I think your friend's logging in here. My father was an executive for the Cyclone Fence Division of United States Steel. And every evening he would come home and he would commandeer the dinner table. My mom and myself were the only listeners, and he would tell us about his day. And one day he said, I just had to go down into, I'm not going to say the word, but the N-word land. I don't know if you know what that means, but the N-word land for Black people. And install a fence around the chemical drums at Larson's Laundry, because all those N-word kids from the ghetto come down the hill and they sniff the glue to get high. But son, you don't have to worry. You're safe here with your kind of people. That was the toxic stew that I grew up in the 50s. I learned in school that my people, white people, had civilized the world, civilized the United States. We freed the slaves and we saved the world in World War II, and everybody was thankful to us, the great white leaders of the world. I never learned anything in school about lynchings in the South of Black people, the horrible conditions on Native American reservations, or of the privileges I had as a white boy in society. That all began to crumble when I got into high school. I mean, those are just, that was the community I lived in. What else did I know? I never interacted with any other people from different ethnic groups. We were in our little white privileged community. When I got into high school, I formed a rock and roll band. And we got well known around town. This is in Seattle, Washington. And we played with groups from all over the city, and most of them were Black kids, high school kids like myself. And one of them is someone that you probably have heard of, is Jimi Hendrix. It was his start. He started a group called the Velvetones before he got famous. So we used to play with them. We'd go to parties afterwards, and I started meeting people from all different kinds of backgrounds. And I went, okay, this crap that my dad's been teaching me, it just doesn't make sense. These are good people. I had connections with all kinds of people, and we had this bond through music and our appreciation of rhythm and blues. And I began to doubt some of the teachings I had in school and from my father. The love of rhythm and blues came really apparent with my favorite musician, Ray Charles. And I don't know if you all know Ray Charles, but that's my generation back in the 50s and 60s. He was a master of rhythm and blues, and he got his start in Seattle. So he would come in every year, they do a performance, and then on Sunday, they would invite high school swing bands down to play with their musicians. And I was so impressed, and I just learned so much from that. And then I was getting ready to start college, and I just wanted to challenge my dad's beliefs that was passing on to me. So I asked him one day, I said, Dad, are you racist? And he said, No, I'm not racist. Well, I said, you've been teaching me that all these other people, other than our white culture, are to be feared, and they're not quite as good as us. And he said, well, some of them are okay, but when it comes down to it, they just cannot be leaders like our kind can. When I went away to college, I would take the ferry boat from Seattle to Bremerton. It was an hour ferry trip, and I'd spend the week there, and then I would come home on the weekend. I made all kinds of new friends there. And one day I decided to challenge my father and really get him to admit that he's a racist. I said, Hey, Dad, I met this guy at college, and he's from Walla Walla, Washington, which is the southeast corner. He's far away from home, and he doesn't have any family to see. And I'd like to bring him home for the weekend. Is that okay? And he went, Of course. Oh, it'd be fantastic. Bring your college friends. I said, Yeah, he's studying to be a doctor, and he wants to be a brain surgeon. Oh, great. He was so excited that I was coming up in the world with more intelligent people. And I said, okay, well, we'll be here next Friday. But by the way, he's a Black kid. I'm sure that doesn't make any difference. And my dad just started shaking his head and going, he can't come. And I said, why? Are you a racist? And he said, no, I'm not a racist. And then all the stereotypes came out. He said, a Black young man coming down into our nice neighborhood, the neighbors they're probably going to be afraid. And I'm sure, and they do steal things. And I'm sure your friend's nice and all that. There's some good ones, but he just can't come. And that put me into a rage. And I looked at my mom and I said, Mom, come on, help me out here. My loving mom that talked about how to love and accept people for who they are and not stereotype people. I said, come on, Mom, help me out. And one of the worst things that's ever happened to me in my life is my mom says, I agree with your father. That tore me apart. I mean, I just left in a rage, and I didn't come back for about 6 months. I did talk to my mother later on about this, and she said, well, as a woman, as a wife, I was trained that I had to support my husband. So I couldn't go against him. I just had to agree with him, even though I don't believe that. That was my duty as a wife. Well, I finished college and I got involved with marches with groups like Martin Luther King that were vying for civil rights. And I was really learning a lot about discrimination and stereotypes. And as soon as I finished college with a business degree, I got drafted into the United States Army during the Vietnam War. And my duty station was Korea, up on the demilitarized zone with North Korea, because North Korea had captured one of our naval spy ships called the Pueblo, which we said wasn't a spy ship, and they had 29 American hostages. So they sent half of my group to Vietnam to fight the war there that I was actually fighting against, protesting. And then the rest of us, they sent to Korea up in the demilitarized zone. And that was another great eye opener for me, because we'd spend 12 hours most every night in a foxhole looking into North Korea. And you'd be with another guy and you got to know each other really well. And then back in the barracks, we're all together. There's people from all over the country. There was Reginald. He was said, I'm a black ghetto kid, this big tall guy. And Arthur, a white pig farmer from Alabama, and the smoothest Latin dancer, Moises from Miami. We just met all kinds of people, and we really developed an appreciation and lifelong friendships. And I still see some of those people today. When I came back from the military, I knew that I wanted to go into teaching. So I went to a private teachers college using the GI Bill, which was nice. And they had a curriculum which they call anti-bias curriculum. The woman wrote the book for it, and it's been kind of a Bible throughout education in preschool and elementary schools in the United States. And what that was to look at, do you have biases and stereotypes in your classroom? And the first thing was to look at your environment. Look around and see if you really see diversity. So I was teaching preschool in a college lab school. We had 3 to 6 year old children. We had some kindergarten kids in the program. And I started looking in the classroom for what we had. All the pictures on the wall, all the pictures on the puzzles, all the books, they were all white kids. There was no diversity. And so I got together with the kids and I said, you know what? Let's look at some of these magazines, toy sale magazines. Let's look for how you can see yourself in here. So together we ordered books. We got dolls that were of different ethnic groups, pictures, puzzles. We had families send in their, and it was mostly a low income single mothers with children, and we had them send in their families, and they were represented all different kinds of ethnic groups. Send in the family pictures. We'd make books and we'd put them in the kids' book corner. They could read about each other's family. We posted that around, and we really developed. And I learned so much from this woman. She's Louise Derman Sparks, and the book is called Anti-Bias Curriculum, that I've still used to this day. And that was back in the 90s, early 90s, when she wrote that. So I took care of my father the last 3 years of his life. And I had a relationship with him. You know, he was who he was, but he finally did admit that he was racist. He said, you know, I was raised racist. That's it. That's how I was taught. That's what I learned. I didn't interact with anybody else. And my father told me just what I've been telling you. And he said, I'm sorry for that, but I still believe it, to tell you the truth. And what I hope in my life with my children is that when my children remember me, they say, my dad taught us to cherish and respect all cultures and diversity that we have in this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much. I love the way you always bring in your personal stories here, because I remember you talking about yet another personal story last year, and your dad, of course, was one of the characters that, and obviously, so I think when we talk about personal stories, Our parents do play a huge role. Um, Interesting, really interesting story, and lots to learn and lots to unlearn, as you're saying. Loved it thoroughly, Ed. Thanks a lot. Yes, opening it up to the audience.
Well, thank you, Ed, for that story in support of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right.
Very happy that that is part of the Chennai Storytelling Festival, and we hope that many senior people in the USA get the message. We don't have to mention any names.
No, we
You know,
don't.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Don't count on it.
Well,
Yeah, one of the thing, the Storytelling Association of California, we're doing a project with a company that works with disabled students, and we each have three students, or they're adults, and they all want to learn how to share their experience by storytelling rather than just talking about it. So it's a great project. We're going to work for about 6 weeks on it. We're helping them develop their story, and then we're going to perform it and have a real nice ending to that. So it's really, because I'm working with a blind woman, a man who has cerebral palsy and he can't speak very well, but he can type his story, and then another man who was sterilized through the eugenics movement,
oh my
like
God.
what Hitler was doing. And he sometimes he can talk, sometimes he can't, because he has said, I have 4 or 5 seizures a day. And it's just really amazing working with this crowd, and we want to get their story out there.
And by the way, I was very proud yesterday. The American Folklore Society sent out an email also expressing strong support for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm
Nice.
very proud of them, of us. I'm a member of it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the whole field of folklore, the academic field, tends to be respectful of that.
It is the need of the hour, isn't it, Eric? Especially in the American scene, it's the need of the hour, the hot topic, and something that is changing. I mean, not amazingly, but drastically. And I think, as you said, it's the Americans who need to do something about it and rein things back if possible before it goes out of
We're doing
blowing it
the
up.
best we can, and always what we can do is create good culture with the people we're with, and just hope that that spreads and survives and has the necessary power. Jeff? Oh, you're on mute.
Well, I'm on now. I think Ed's a little bit older than I am.
78.
Yeah, you got a few years on me, but I wasn't that old in the 50s, but I do remember the 60s. I remember when black people rode in the back of the bus.
Yeah.
I remember when the only black people you ever saw were janitors and basically elevator operators. But
Right.
now my ancestors are Scottish. We were considered savages by the English and treated like second-rate citizens. So when you start talking about the white supremacy culture, it's not just white supremacy, it's Northern European. My first job, I was asked by a family member if my boss was white or Italian.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to answer that. I thought Italians were white.
Sure.
So,
yeah, when you look back through history, you see that discrimination all the way through. And I'm sure in your country, India, you have issues with diversity, and we're better than the other and all that stuff.
So it's a complicated issue. But I think in the long run, if that issue is ever actually dealt with and eliminated, it's going to be us that does it. It's going to be the storytellers that are going to make the bridges and take down those barriers.
Yeah. Good point.
Thanks, Jeff. Sudhir, you wanted to say something?
No, I just wanted to, pitch in for that DEI. I mean, it's definitely the need of the hour, but in my speaking fraternity, I know plenty of people whose contracts got cancelled. They were actually DEI speakers and they were running workshops.
Oh.
And I know
Right.
plenty of them whose contracts got cancelled. I mean, I know one lady whose contract got cancelled couple of hours ago when she was about to deliver her talk to NASA. So I think it's that level of devastation, and I know plenty more, and especially in the American side. So now they are looking
Yeah.
for new opportunities, more in the Southeast Asia or more in the India side. But that's how it is floating. So I just wanted to put in a thought. That's it.
That's so true. It's really horrible. I have friends that have lost, they got grant money that's coming, so they set up, they rented a space, they've bought materials with their own money, and they were February 1, they were supposed to get part of their money for the grant that they had, and they're all on hold and probably gone, at least for a while. That's not
And
good.
medical programs all around the world are being affected. It's just tragic, unbelievable and tragic.
And it has such a domino effect across the world.
Yeah.
And that's really worrisome. And as Jeff was saying, if somebody needs to do it, it has to be the storytellers who need to really take the stories forward and contribute in whatever way we can.
It's bad enough that they've frozen foreign aid, but I run a food pantry. I feed people that have food insecurity, and we don't know now whether we have funding to buy food.
Yeah.
I mean, it's gotten to the point we're not even feeding our own people, let alone anybody else.
Right. Bad. Definitely.
Right.
Well,
Yes, Ed, go ahead.
A lot of my European friends said when Trump was first elected in the early, the 2017, they said, "How could you elect someone like that?" And I was traveling through Northern Europe, and I said, "Here's the deal. I'm from California, and only one person in California voted for Trump, and we sent him to Arizona."
So that is a question I think a lot of us were asking. What were you thinking? How could you vote? Anyways, the whole discussion is going extremely political now. We'll rein it back and come back to our festival. But I think Veena has something to add before that. Please go ahead, Veena.
Thank you, Pratigya. And Edward, this is the first time I've heard you, and I feel a sudden connect, because my childhood was in Seattle. That was my first primary years, and I have such I had such wonderful memories of Seattle. I had friends, as you talk about the Black, the Chinese, the Americans, and I have wonderful my childhood memories. My first schooling was there. So this is the need of the hour, as Pratigya says. It feels very sad. I have a lot of relatives there also who do feel a little insecure now. But I really want to recollect and hope that time comes back because, my childhood is something which I'll never forget. And I have those friends in touch as now. We were in Union Bay Circle. My father was a doctor. And we were there for around 4 years. I'm talking about the late 60s, if you can say, a long time back. But I have such wonderful memories. It feels sad to see what is happening now, actually. And thank you for your story, sharing a personal experience. I immediately came to know the kind of person you are. So much learning from your story. Thank you so much.
And the late 60s was a good time in the United States, a much more inclusive time.
I do have those memories now. Yes, also.
And in the band, Ed, were you the singer or instrumentalist?
Saxophone.
Whoa.
Saxophone player. That was my thing. And I still have the cards that I made up that we used to pass out. We were called the accents.
Oh,
and my mother made us all gold sports jackets. And then we had black slacks and patent leather shoes and a vest. And we just thought we were so cool. And we were pretty cool. But by the time I was a senior in high school, I had a 1.2 grade point average because I didn't care about school. I cared about music.
I guess you were always into arts. Another thing that just came to my mind, Ed, before we move on to the next teller, is I recently went through a training for personal stories because I've started enjoying telling them more often. And I think when I started out telling that story, I felt like if this person is a monster, I want that person to remain a monster in the personal story. And I learned over a period of time that mellowing it down somewhere can help me as a teller and more individual as a person to accept what has happened with me. And I love the way I'm sure you had the rift with your dad that you were talking about. That must have been really heated up as a college student. But you've come around that, and I love the
Sure.
way the whole thing came around there. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Well, I just want to add one thing to that. My mother brought us back together, and she got my father to realize that I'm an individual with my own interests, my own needs, and vice versa. She taught me about who he was, how he learned, how he developed these attitudes. And once I understood that, then we could communicate. We could have arguments and not take it personally. And we had differences, but we found our commonality too. And you can find that really with most anybody, really. You really try hard.
You're talking about your mother, and I'll tell you something very personal. I had my son trying to explain this to me about me and my husband, saying, you have to understand each other, that you need to accept the way that you are. And I laughed it out and I said, oh, I'm getting relationship counseling from my own son. That's interesting. And he's hardly 18. So,
Funny.
okay, quickly, Harita, we'll take it from you and then move on to the next teller.
Thank you, Edith, for the wonderful personal story. I'm sure we all will agree that you're bold and gold. I especially want to highlight this point from your story where you helped your school children, when you were working as a teacher, to create that one of its kind of a book, that really speaks volume about how much you loved your job and you want things to be right, especially when you're teaching to young minds, isn't it? I really appreciate you for that job that you have done. Loved your story, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Harita. Thank you once again, Ed, especially for sharing a personal story. We're moving on to our next teller for the day. We have Sudhir Pathak. Sudhir, please unmute yourself. Let me just spotlight you. Sudhir is sharing yet another personal story, and it's called Devastating to Dazzling. Sudhir joins us from New Delhi. Please introduce yourself fully, Sudhir, and share a story with us.
Thank you, Pratigya. And can I get a sharing rights as well? Because at one moment I might want to present one slider, if that's okay.
Sure. Yes. You wanted to do it right now?
I mean, you can give it to me. I will do it as the story floats.
I made him co-host.
Perfect.
I think I have the rights now. Thank you. Thank you very much, Eric, for this wonderful storytelling festival. I'm appearing for the second time. First time, I think it was somewhere near COVID, if I'm remembering it correctly. And you were also new to Zoom. You were also trying to understand a lot of things around the Zoom. So I remember it that ways. About myself, I am a professional speaker. I am a resiliency expert, and I am basically doing it coming from my own stories. So as I tell my story, which is again a personal story, which Pratigya just titled as Devastating to Dazzling, you will come to know more about me. But that's something which I love to do, a professional speaking. But apart from that, I am also a very technical person. I work in the area of artificial intelligence. I work for IBM. So that's my daytime thing. But I'm more passionate towards the professional speaking. And with everyone's permission, I would like to start now. I'm sure that many of you, if not everyone, must have seen this movie, Munna Bhai MBBS. This is the number one, Munna Bhai MBBS 1. And I would like you to focus on one particular character here, and that character was Zahir, Jimmy Shegil, and a scene wherein he goes to the doctor and with some reports and all, and the doctor tells him that your reports are not good, you have cancer, and you have to get admitted to the hospital today itself. And when he says, it's not possible for me today itself, I have a lot of things to do, The doctor asks him, okay, wrap up all your work and get admitted the very next day. And he was absolutely in shock. This was exactly the same thing which was happening to me where in the year 2005, and I still remember the date. It was 21st of February 2005. I freshly came out of my post graduation, completing my masters, went to see a doctor just because I felt a bit of dizziness and a bit of nauseatic feeling. The doctor, after seeing the reports, told me to get admitted to the hospital on the very same day itself. And I told him I cannot do it right away. I have a lot of things to do. I'm carrying aspirations. I have just coming out of giving some job interviews. He said, okay, then wrap it up everything and get admitted tomorrow. I didn't have the courage and I went alone. But I still asked him, what is the problem? What has happened to me? And he said, both of your kidneys are failed and you need to get admitted to hospital immediately. And more than the pain of losing the kidneys, I think at this juncture, I still remember doctor's face. It was absolutely a stone faced. He was not carrying any emotions. So that was the day when my ordeal basically started. And this whole fight went on for 7 long years. And it was, let me tell you, it was not easy. It was not easy because because I was a person who was carrying the dreams of my parents, right? They came from somewhere from the agricultural background, put all their money and stake on me, and to say that someday this child will come up and will carry our dreams forward and fulfill it. But life had other plans to me. Okay, so those that's how my feeling floated that particular day. I was absolutely not sure what was going to happen, and I totally went into a state of depression. I just want to show you a picture. Okay, are you able to see? Not yet.
Sudhir, if you like, quickly email it to me and I'll put it up.
Okay, just give me 1 second then. I sent it to you, Eric.
Okay, keep going. Once I have it ready, I'll tell you.
Okay. So that was the day when the 7-year long journey started, and as I said, it was not easy at all. What I was going through was this: I need to go, or I was required to go to a dialysis for 2 to 3 days in a week, wherein uh, it was very difficult and painful process. But that was not all. What was happening around me was more concerning than what exactly was happening on the hospital bed. I was getting depleted on the finances because the expenditures were too high and I was very new to the professional world. I was somehow able to manage on my job, just surviving, barely surviving somehow. And the people whom I trusted were the ones who were running apart from me, giving all sorts of reasons. So, what actually at that time I was staring at was death. But what exactly was keeping me motivated were my parents' dreams somehow. So that is how my journey was going through at that time. One particular evening, after returning from dialysis, I I saw a bunch of guys who were nearly of my age itself, and noticed that they were very happy, enjoying their life. And the emotion or the thought that triggered to me at that time was, didn't I have the right to live the same life as they are living? Can I not be happy as they are? They are of my same age, but then I am here struggling to survive and they are just enjoying their life. So that thought stayed in my head. I went back home, didn't sleep that night. I still remember because it was a very important day or night for me. I slept around 2 in the night and then woke up at 4 in the morning. But that thought was still in my head. And I was feeling claustrophobic at my bedroom. So I just rushed away to the balcony. I was looking outside to the street, to the street which generally used to be very, there used to be a lot of hustle bustle in the daytime. It was absolutely silent, and there was a gush of wind which was hitting my face, and it was stinging my eyes. My tears just stopped. It was about to trickle down, but I managed to stop it. And that time I realized something divine was happening around me. I still don't know who was that, how was that happening. I didn't call for that divinity to come to me, but there was some inner voice or outer voice which was telling me, this is not the time to give up. You can still give it a fight. You also have the right to live with the same, like those kids or the guys living in the bus stop. So why are you not giving it a fight? So that was a transformative day to me, at least at that moment. Did everything change after that? No, it's not that everything changed overnight and things started happening beautifully. But it gave me a spark. It gave me a spark to give a fight. If even if the end result is something which I was staring at. So what happened as the gradual step after that particular night was, I stopped complaining. I stopped putting the reason for my circumstances or the blame of my circumstances to someone else. I started living or thinking life in a different way. The dialysis was still on. The finances were still depleting. The loved ones were still leaving me. But my focus was more onto life now. And with that, I must say that I was attracting some good people as well around, some doctors who are still in touch with me as a good friends of mine. So that ordeal continued for 7 years, and I still remember very dominantly that the dialysis, which was a painful process, after this after this intervention or after this introspection rather, I was feeling as if dialysis, the blood going out and then coming in, is like all the negativity is gradually flushed out and all the positivity is gradually coming in. It was not an instantaneous process, but those were the thoughts which I was carrying. It was helping me to such an extent that I was living my life with a liveliness. So that ordeal continued for several long years. And then in the year 2011, I got a kidney donated and I came out and started living my life. So did the story end here? No. In fact, the story started from here. So after coming out of all this, the long 7 years staring at death and fighting it out, I was just thinking, what exactly does it mean? How can I give it back? If I have suffered so much in life, I cannot just go and get it to waste. So I just started realizing what are the important things which I learned and which I can give it back. I think the first and the foremost thing which I learned was a question which I think all of us faces at one point or other is, why me? If you remember that Zahir story, the first question he was asking was, why me? Because whenever we get challenges and the setbacks and the failures, we start feeling a bit of inferior. We say, why the God has given it to me? What actually I did, unknowingly, I must say, that I started changing those questions to, how can I? So instead of asking why my kidneys got failed, why challenges came to me, I started thinking, how can I make my life better? How can I, how can I, how can I not make anyone else responsible for my circumstances? How can I bring more finances to me so that I can overcome these financial challenges? So at the time when everyone was running away, even the girl to whom I loved the most left me at the most challenging time. Now I was not, putting the blame on her. I was solely responsible for whatever was happening to me. Lesson number 2 is building resilience is possible, but it is not going to happen over a day, right? So what I mean to say is like this: when we see or when we remember Usain Bolt, we always remember a 100-meter world record holder who ran 100 meters in just 9.52 seconds. But we do not know what has gone on the background. How many times did he fail? How many times did he not achieve the 9.52? He was not willing to come to the practice sessions. There was rain, there was snow, there were n number of other reasons. But one thing which kept him moving or kept me moving was not to give up, at least to show up. So building resilience is a skill. And the way I build is I always remembered the good things which happened to me to get up and start again. So good things were there, but I was just not focusing on that. So my second learning was building resilience is possible, can be done, and that's exactly what I'm teaching these days to everyone. And then number 3, I think the most important one is bringing a purpose in life. I when I was 24, 25 and got this kidney failure, what was my story? Had I died after a couple of years, what was my story? My story was a 27-year-old guy, young and energetic, died with kidney failures. That's it. And so I wanted to change my story now. I wanted to be more meaningful, bigger than me. And I had this fondness towards kids. So what I gradually started doing was and is I built up an NGO wherein we started working towards the well-being of kids. So we initially brought in some handful number of kids from the nearby slum or underprivileged areas in Pune. We brought them together in a small center. We started teaching them, feeding them, giving them their social well-being. And then we gradually started taking contributions, started inducting more people in, and we grew the number to 100. This year, we have 300. So we have 300 kids in Pune now who are less privileged than my kid or your kids, and now they're getting what they deserve to get. They are getting food, studies, and their social well-being. And the story is not ending here. The story is already only growing from here. So what I did yesterday itself is I just collaborated with one of the resilient coaches. He said that I built a curriculum. I said, you bring it on to my kids then, and then let's run this resilient program for the kids age from 9 to 16. So now we are running a resilient program for these kids. And plus, we are increasing the count. The intention is not to increase the count, but the intention is to bring well-being to more kids. So the target is that we will be able to take it to 1,000 by the next year starts. So that's the biggest of the achievements I can say very proudly, bringing a purpose, and then giving it back to the society. And I started realizing that the story is taking some shape. So had the kidney failure guy died now, there will be some sense to his story. But I want this story to grow on. And my end message is, see, nobody wants setbacks and failures and challenges in life. Nobody. Everyone, our mind is designed in a way that it will always take us to comfort, right? It will always push us towards the sleep. But what is the best thing about the challenge is, whenever they come, they will only grow you. They will bring the things or the best in your life, or sometimes your attributes to which you are unaware of till date. Had my kidneys not failed, these 300 kids, possibly, I would not, or nobody would have been contributing to their life. So I will not say I'm thankful that my kidneys got failed. No, I don't want to give this emotion to the universe. Yes, at least I got something which basically pushed me to see beyond the challenges. So in the end, it's all possible. As a resiliency expert, I always say that it is absolutely possible that even if when you face the toughest of your life challenges, and if you see the other perspective of the challenges, you will only come out better. And it's scientifically possible. I know the ways and the tricks how it can be achieved. So that can be discussed some other day. But that's how I made a meaning out of my life and will continue to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have the photo ready. Can we show the photo?
Not needed now, but you can still present it. It's okay.
Let's see.
Yeah. So I just wanted to bring it in between the story. These are my friends, and the spectacled person is me, with a bandaged hand from where the dialysis was basically happening. So I just wanted to bring it up and show, that how I was trying to bring the life back amongst all the challenges. So you can stop presenting, Eric. Thank you very much.
Wow. Truly, truly devastating to dazzling. Amazing, absolutely inspiring story, Sudhir. I'm sure each one of us have lots to learn, relate to, understand, and take forward in our own lives with what you have shared. But I think one thing that really sticks out to me, and I'm amazed how you're able to do this so beautifully, so easily. You're talking about your death, and you're talking about if I had died at that time, this would have been my story. If I die now, this is my story. If I die later, this is my story. It's not easy to talk about your death like that. I'm sure most of us struggle with that. A lot of people are really worried when it comes to talking about death, and talking about your own death. Hats off to you.
Yeah, thank you, Pratigya. And I don't know. I mean, it's a good observation which you brought in. I never thought it this way, but possibly because I have seen it from so near, uh, possibly that's why the fear has basically subsided if it has not gone fully.
Yes, Renu, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Sudhir, for sharing your personal story. It resonated a lot with me because I have faced some very difficult situations in my life, especially in the last few years as I was growing older. And it has really taught me a lot, and I'm very, very grateful that I went through these challenges, like you said, because it's the challenges, it's a difficult situation that really bring out the best in us. I have completely transformed from who I was earlier. I was, a very angry person. I was very irritated. I didn't love my family much. I was always complaining about others. Everything that went wrong with my life, I would always blame somebody else. But today, I have taken responsibility for myself, my emotions, and I am very, very, I believe that everything starts and ends with the self. So I now believe that no matter when I die, it doesn't matter, because whatever God has sent my way or whatever the universe has sent my way has always, always been for my highest good. And today, whatever I am is because of all the challenges. I started having seizures or epileptic fits at the age of 46. And it continued for a few years. And then I was on my highest medication. And I was perfectly all right. 10 years, I didn't have any seizures. Then suddenly this month, because I was very confident that I can, I can manage without medication, because my medication had come down to the basic, very low level. I stopped taking medication the last, I think, 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And suddenly last Thursday, the 23rd of January, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I had 3 seizures, one after. And I had to be rushed to hospital in an ambulance. And I did not come out of it the entire Thursday till Friday afternoon. And I think when I came out, the doctor was very worried, my neuro, and she in fact was planning to do a spinal tap because she thought it was meningitis. I have a very severe bite on my tongue. But despite everything, I said, I'm not canceling my storytelling. I'm going to continue telling stories because that's something that I'm very passionate about and I love doing it, not only for children, but also for adults. You can ask Ed. I join 3 swaps every single month. And every time I challenge myself by telling a new story. And I mostly write my own stories, both for children as well as adults. In fact, today also I'll be sharing a story that I've written myself. And that's why I really thought I must open my mouth and talk to you, because you have said the same thing, that you're not scared of death. I'm not scared of death anymore. I feel I'm ready to do anything. And I've told God, thank you for putting me through that. I went to severe depression, by the way, from 22 to 24. March, I think, is when I started coming out of it. And Eric is very aware because I made a mess of 2023 storytelling. I was supposed to do a workshop, which I canceled. Poor thing. I put poor Eric through so much trouble. But I couldn't help it. And my family stood by me. My husband was very, very strong. He stood by me and he was so loving and kind. So today, I think he's a very, very good human being. And it's only in these kind of situations that bring out the love from your family. Both my daughters, very supportive. I was nasty to everybody. But today I'm telling God every day, thank you for putting me through that. Thank you for bringing me out of it. And thank you for helping me understand myself and others better. Today, I have no expectations from anyone. I can love people without any expectations. I think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing that's happened. I'm so happy that you have found peace with yourself and you're doing so much wonderful work. In fact, I'm also making an NGO out of my Kathavriksh. I have a Kathavriksh and I'm making an NGO because I want to give back to society, not just to children, but also to animals, because I love animals very much. That's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Wonderful, Renu. Wonderful, Renu. And I think there's just one sentence which will stick with me and which has happened to me as well, is that I started taking responsibility of my own life, right? So no matter what was happening, what has happened, and what is happening, and even in fact what will happen, you started taking the responsibility. And I think that is the case with all of us, but knowingly or unknowingly, people, it's more of a blame game. So let's not go in there, but very, 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 very nice to hear it from you, Renu. And I think thank you very much, because there were times or there were junctures in your whole of this when you were sharing your story, I was actually getting goosebumps. Thank you very much for sharing that, Renu.
Thanks. Yes, Ed, you want to go ahead?
I think she was before. Well, okay. So your messages are really important, going through trauma, and even if people are abandoning you, you still, with the right attitude and spirit and the way you reach out, however that is, to whatever you believe in, that can carry you through these difficult times, and you can move on. And it's very possible, like with you, that opened new doors for you, new ways of thinking. And then I like how you tied that in with some of the work you're doing now, and where what happened to you led you to that experience, which has really fulfilled your life and is still doing that. I also want to comment on your storytelling. Your story, you have a very easy flow. I like the way you're very precise with your language, and it flows well. You got good gestures and really precise language. And I like some of the images when you brought that image of blood flowing in your dialysis. You created some really, really interesting images that got your point across. So thank you very much. I enjoyed your story.
Thank you, Ed. Yes, Vijaylakshmi, please.
Thank you, Sudhir, for that most touching story, the challenges that you went through, and the inspiration you're giving through your NGO, teaching children resilience. Can be very, very difficult, but your kind of story sort of inspires others who might be going through similar challenges, and how you turned it around to your own advantage to take care of yourself and cure yourself. Because they say 50% is when you start looking at yourself more positively, and it helps with the rest of the treatment to get out of a situation which is really, really very challenging and very, very difficult. Hats off to you, and keep well, keep cheer, because I have a dear, dear friend who went through the same thing and had to have a kidney transplant. And we work together many a times with children and books. So I can understand and relate to the kind of situation you were in. My best wishes to you, to your NGO. Keep well and do well. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijaylakshmi. Anybody else? I must add, And I love the way you've made notes and you give that kind of very specific feedback. I appreciate that a lot, and thanks a lot. Yeah, moving on to our next teller for the day. Thank you once again, Sudhir, for that wonderful story. We now have Vijaylakshmi Nagaraj from Bangalore. Let me just spotlight you there. So Vijaylakshmi is sharing a fictional story once again written by her. And this story is called The Abode in Himalayas. It's all yours, Vijaylakshmi.
Thank you so much, Pratigya. Thank you, Eric. This is the first time for me with Chennai Storytelling Festival, and to be part of it, I'm really honored. Thank you so much. Yes, I write books for children.
Sorry, Vijay, I'm interrupting you. But I was supposed to be the next. I was supposed to be third teller.
I'm so sorry, Renu. You want to go next? Is it okay if Vijaylakshmi does? I'm really sorry about the mess up. You need to leave, Renu?
I would like to know. I would like to go. Oh, no. If Vijay wants to go, continue. Because some of my friends have joined. That's why. In case can't stay on too much longer.
My sincere apologies. Vijaylakshmi, is it okay if Renu goes next? I'm really sorry about this goof up. Really sorry, Vijaylakshmi. And really sorry, Renu, as well. So, sorry for that goof up. We have Renu telling us next. And Renu writes a lot of stories, like as she was saying, a lot of stories that she shares, she writes herself. And this is also a self-written story called The Shishya being the student. Renu, all yours.
Thank you, Pratigya. And I am from Chennai. I have my own storytelling initiative called Kathabridge. I conduct a lot of programs, both for adults and for children. I love training. In fact, one of my students is here, my current student. I've just started one course. They're very understanding because I had to cancel last Sunday and this Sunday as well because I have this deep cut on my tongue. I was not able to talk for some time. So thank you very much, Soundaram, for joining today. And thank you, Brinda, for being here. Brinda is a very close friend of mine. It's because of her that I came out of my depression because she suggested that I go to another psychiatrist. So I have to bring this up because I'm deeply grateful to her for whatever I'm doing now. So now that is that aside, I'm sharing a story called The Shishya. And this is a story which lends itself to being told in the first person. So I'm telling in the first person, I'm the character. And I want to make it very clear, this is not a personal story. I'm just telling it in the character. So here goes. I was born into a family, into a musical family. The house always resounded with music. My mother, a very renowned vocalist, Carnatic vocalist, and my dad, a mridangam player. Now, Carnatic music is the kind of music you find in the south of India, in case some of you don't know. And, well, I was not a much wanted child. I was born and my mother was about 40 and my dad was about 47. They were not really looking forward to having a child because both of them were in love with their own music as well as very much in love with each other. They had not planned for children at all. So I was a bit of an anomaly in their lives. Well, I was not really neglected. There was a very good nanny who was appointed to take care of my physical needs. And of course, I had my aunt, Saraswati, who really gave me all the love and hugs that I did not receive from my parents. My parents kind of just sort of accepted the fact that I was a part of furniture perhaps in the house. Occasionally, my dad would pat me very absent-mindedly on my head. That was the only kind of affection I received from my parents. Now, Saraswati more than made up for it. She insisted that I call her Saras. And she was much younger to my mom. And she was not a music person at all. She had a lovely voice. And my mother would sometimes tell her, Saraswati, I really don't understand what's wrong with you. You have a wonderful voice. And you're named after the goddess of learning. Why don't you put yourself together and learn music? And my aunt would just shrug her shoulders, smile, laugh out loudly, and leave them. She never wanted to get into a confrontation with my mother. My mother could be very, very difficult sometimes. And so my life continued like that till I was about 15. Now, one day, on the very rare occasions my mother came to the school for a PTA, my teachers told her, you know something, Mrs. Varadarajan? Your daughter, Shakuntala, she has a beautiful voice. She's been winning all the competitions all these years. Really? My mother looked at me like this. She has a lovely voice. Hadn't she heard of genes? Oh my God. My mom not recognizing my talent. Madam, you should get her trained, her voice trained. I don't think she's getting trained right now, is she? Well, I wasn't aware that she had a good voice, my mother said. But I will ensure that I train her myself. And so the classes started. 4 o'clock in the morning. I had to get up and be ready to learn from my mom. So she didn't have time to spare after that. But you know something? I really loved being with her because that was the only time and her entire attention was on me. I quite enjoyed that. Exactly for 1 hour. At 5 o'clock, she would leave me and say, okay, I'll see you tomorrow morning at 4. That was it. And so 2-3 years went by. I continued to learn under her guidance, and I know my voice became better. And the teachers in school were very happy with me. When I was about 18 years old, I just finished schooling. I was getting into college. My dad, very unexpectedly, passed away. He was on his way for a concert, and his car, another car, met with a head-on collision, and he happened to be sitting in front. And so he was killed on the spot. Now, I felt sorry for my mom. I didn't miss my dad very much because obviously he hardly was there present in my life. But my mom, there's a drastic change in her. She became much quieter. She hardly spoke. She refused concerts, which she never ever did. She now sat only for temple concerts. Otherwise, she refused to go. And it was really, really sad for me to see that. I know they loved each other very much. I remember there were occasions when they would just look at each other and burst into laughter. It was as though there was a conversation that happened between them that I was not aware of. That was the kind of love they shared. And I felt terribly sorry for her. But my life continued. I went to college. And then one day my mother said, I don't think I can teach you anymore, Shakun. I think you need to go to my Guruji now. Guruji? I was pretty surprised. He was my mother's teacher. And she continued to go to him. I was ready for Guruji. He rarely ever accepted students. So my mother took me along to him. He looked at me, glanced at me, and looked away and said, well, Sushila, your daughter, she must have some talent. She can come to me from tomorrow. Sing for me now, he said. So I sang a few lines. Not bad, he said. And I was quite affronted. Not bad? What do you think of himself? Did I really want to learn with him? I said. And I went back. The next day onwards, my classes started. He never, ever complimented me. Always say, yeah, you can do it better tomorrow. Bye. And it went on like this for a few years. And every time there was a concert where he would be singing, he would invite 1 or 2 of us to accompany him. But he never, ever gave me a chance to sing, at least a welcoming song. The auditoriums would always be completely full and tickets sold out months ahead. But to me, given a chance, never. I felt very, very angry. One day I went up to my mother and said, I'm tired of learning under this man. I don't think I want to learn. All the time he says, better, it's okay, do better tomorrow. I'm tired of him. My mother looked at me and she said, you think you can find a better teacher then go ahead. Shakuntala, go ahead. Well, I had to bite my tongue and continue going to him. Now one day, he said to me, Shakuntala, tomorrow we have a concert. You please come along with me. But Draupadi will also be coming. What? Why Draupadi? She's not better than me. I'm much better than her. But I kept the thoughts to myself. As the next day, we left. I dressed very carefully. I wore my favorite sari, purple. I wore very nice jewelry. I looked at the mirror and admired myself and said, wow, you're looking fabulous. Nobody can look better than you. I had thick, lustrous hair, but I didn't grow it very long. Despite my mother kept it really short. After all, she kept telling me, grow your hair, and I didn't want to do what she said. And so there I was, took a cab, went to the auditorium, entered it, went onto the stage. And he looked at me and he said, he was already seated there, the musicians were there, and he looked at me and said, sit here, right next to him. I said, okay, I'll sit. And then he turned to Draupadi and said, start the welcome song. And so she sang, and I just sat there and thought, oh my God, look at us sing. And when she was done, he looked at me and said, Shakuntala, sing. What? He wanted me to sing now when I was not prepared? I froze. My blood ran, hot and cold. I thought, will I be able to even open my mouth? The auditorium is crowded and they were all waiting for him to sing. How could I sing now? But I gathered my thoughts together and remembered the two things he had told me long ago. Shakuntala, remember, every time you sing, please listen to yourself sing. That's the only way you'll know that you're doing a good job. And remember another thing, put out your hand like this and gather the heartbeat of the audience and hold it with you till you finish. Well, when he told me this, I had actually put out my hand like this and he said, hello. People will think you're crazy if you just do it like that. Do it only in your mind. And so I sat there, I put out my hand in my mind and drew the heartbeat. I didn't know I had the heartbeat or not, but my heart was beating pretty fast. And I started to sing. I couldn't hear myself at the beginning, but I sang and sang, and my voice rose and rose and rose like a bird spreading her wings and flying away from the cage, up and up and up. I sang and sang and sang. And then I stopped. I closed my eyes and looked up. I didn't want to look at the audience. There was absolute silence. I looked at Guruji. Had I disappointed him? And he did this, look up. And so I looked up. The audience was on its feet. And then came the standing ovation. Oh my God, my very first concert. And I was getting a standing ovation. And then the tears started to flow. Tears of happiness, tears of gratitude, tears of regret that I had misunderstood my Guruji. And then I looked, my mom and Saras were sitting there right in front. And I could see an emotion in my mother's eyes I'd never seen all these years. There was love and pride in her eyes. And Saras, of course, went totally mad. She was clapping loud and loud and loud, jumping on her feet. Oh my God, what an experience. I had no words. I had nothing to say. And I stood there till the audience sat down again. Thank you for listening.
What an excellent story and wonderful telling. I think, as somebody was saying, love the visuals, especially. Could really see the audience standing up for a standing ovation, love those, yes. And of course, a self-written story is always special. Opening it out to the audience, any thoughts? Yes, Vijaylakshmi, please go ahead. Vijaylakshmi, you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Sorry. That was so brilliant, Renu. I mean, the expressions, we could feel the emotions and we could really, it touched our hearts, the emotions, the feelings, and the expressive. It was just too good. Brilliant. Thank you so much. The story was just beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vijay. Thank you. This is the third or fourth time I'm sharing the story, actually. I've been sharing
I'm listening to it the first time and I thought it was fabulous.
Thank you. I've been sharing it mostly in the US.
Okay.
Veena, please go ahead.
Renu, that was excellent. You really touched my heart. And I always love to see your post, you're such a down-to-earth person. You write everything so openly. Even if you see something, you go to the beach, you write that. So I've been connecting with you from a long time, And it's wonderful the way you narrated the story. I could really visualize everything and feel it. And at times it does happen. When you do not get the appreciation, you really think, differently. But at the end, your tears were welling up and you could understand. And so much of emotions emoted in your story. It really touched my heart. Lovely story. So beautifully written. Thank you so much for sharing this wonderful story. Tina, thank you so much.
Ramya, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you, Renu. I think I felt like now the audience here were actually standing and giving Renu a standing ovation for such a lovely story and so beautifully told. Renu has that style of very so easy the way she was telling the story, and it was painting such beautiful images for the listener. So thank you so much, Renu. It was wonderful.
Thanks, Ramya. Yes, Ed, please go ahead.
Yeah, I wrote this down a few times. Expressions. Your face is so alive with emotion and expression. And I like carrying that into the first person. That's an interesting way to present a story. And it makes you feel like you're right there sitting next to someone that's sharing something important with you. The story, of course, is really relatable, and it's important. Those images, those different messages about the importance of attachment and how it really is important for parents to notice us, that we just need to feel. It doesn't have to be all the time, but they love us, they care for us. We've got that attachment, even they can criticize us and all that. But if we feel that love and connection, um, that really carries a long way. And then the journey you took us through, and then that you could see that really on your mother, the emotion and the connection, because too many times our people in our lives hold back their emotions, and we're always wondering, am I pleasing them, or am I good enough? All that. So it's all relatable information and good messages. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ed.
Thanks, Ed. I think what Ed said triggered another thought on me about the fact that you told the story in first person. I like the idea where you gave a very clear disclaimer saying this is not your personal story. It kind of puts the audience in the space where you want them to be. So, I like that clarity that you started off with. Thanks a lot for that. Yes, anybody else? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm Soundaram.
Yes, Soundaram. Can you be a little louder, please, if it's possible?
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thank you, Renu ma'am, for the opportunity. Actually, I am her student, as she was telling. I've just gone through just one class of storytelling. The thing which I had a very good take home from this story is the 2 points which Shakuntala was told. Hear your own story and keep the audience on track. And I think that's what exactly she did. And that pulled us till the end. So that was very good. And the way of presentation was amazing. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Taking the time. Thank you for taking the time and joining today. Thank you.
Thanks, Soundaram, on that. Anybody else? Praveen, does it look like you want to say something? Okay, yes. Please unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Renu madam, for sharing this wonderful story. Actually, I can't believe a great soul like you can go in a depression. Yeah, I just wish, you don't ever go in such a mental state. What I liked, your expressions, the way you kept hold of all the audiences, actually like a story character, you actually grabbed everybody's heart, here. Yeah, when you told the story. Yeah, it was really great to listen to you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Praveen. Yes, Ed, please go ahead.
I just have one other thing. One of the things that really impressed me, when you have conversations with the people, you were talking to us before all the story started, you talk very quickly. So I was going, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to follow you? But you didn't do that in the story. When you went in the story, your pacing was just fantastic. So I really commend you for that, because that's hard to do, especially if you're a quick talker and quick thinker, and you've got all this stuff coming in. It's really important to learn, pace it, give the right emphasis at certain times, and you did all that. Hands up. Definitely.
Thank you, Ed. I think I have to thank all the swappers in the US because they very often told me, Renu, you go too fast. Please slow down. We don't talk this fast. I said, it's an Indian tendency. We tend to talk too fast. And I have my thoughts going at what speed, I don't know. So my tongue tries to keep up with it. So I've learned now to slow down a bit. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other thoughts? Okay, thank you, Renu, once again for that wonderful story. Moving on to our next teller, we have Vijaylakshmi.
Thank you.
Vijaylakshmi, I must say, I love the little doll that is hanging behind you. Just settle in and take your time and please share your story.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pratigya. And Thank you, Eric, for this wonderful opportunity. And this is my first time with Chennai Storytelling Festival. And I'm absolutely honored to be here with such wonderful tellers. Well, I'm an educational consultant and I work on integrating storytelling to the classroom learning. I do a couple of workshops for children in the schools and for teachers. And I also have written a lot of books for children, a lot of them connected to the environment and published by Terry, and a lot of folk tales and other stories published by Pratham. I had a book club in Bangalore. I was a founder member of Bookalo, which was a book club where we took books to children and connected them through various book-related activities. Wherever we got a space, we did it for free for all the children. That went on for 6 years. Now I have a little library in my community called the Book Nook. And I do a lot of workshops and book-related activities with children and storytelling to children in an orphanage and to the underprivileged children. I have set up a library and I continue doing storytelling to them with my puppets, and also a lot of activities of making puppets, using it in skits and doing drama and theater. So I do a lot of these workshops too. And today I'm going to narrate a story, An Abode in the Mountains. It is a story I wrote taken from a real life incident. In this beautiful cave up in the Himalayan mountains, which is surrounded by snow, ice, and glaciers. At a height of about 12,000 plus feet is this cave, which is a very special place where people believe and go to. And this is the Amarnath cave. And here, only there's a window of 2 months between July, August, when people go to this cave to see the beautiful ice lingam. And the cave is about 30 feet and the lingam is there for this very short period. And those who have great faith go to this beautiful abode, this cave. And it is believed that Shiva told his consort Parvati about life, about the beauty of life and eternity. And this is where he passed it down to her. So there were this group of people with deep faith who went there. There were 2 routes. One route is via Baltal. Now this Baltal route is about 13 to 14 kilometers. The gradient is extremely steep, but it is a shorter route, which means you go up, you can, within about 6 to 7 hours, you can pay your respects and come down the same day. Whereas the route from Pahalgam is about 43 kilometers, and there are facilities for those pilgrims to go and carry on, go to the cave. So this group of family and friends had decided to go via the tough route, the Baltal route. They said, let's try this route because we want to come back the same day after paying our respects in this beautiful cave. The route is amazing. The hills, the gorges just below with the Amarnath River, which flows out of the glacier of Amarnath. The landscape is beautiful, and it is the constant, regular footstep which takes up this gradient. And it is not that you can go very fast in the mountains. One side, it's a track, one little track, and you just follow one behind the other. There's no way of overtaking. There are people who can't walk, but who use a horse to sit on and go. And the horse also carefully treads, very, very carefully, lest his foot goes to the side and he might just fall down deep into the gorge. So it is this deep faith and trekking one behind the other that this group of families go. Admiring the hillside and the mountains, the beautiful mountains, the birds, and carrying on. The flow of the river deep down in the gorge, in the distance. And as they go up, It's kind of a spiritual expedition through rugged but most breathtaking terrain and landscapes. There's somebody even with a crutch who's going slowly, plodding along with the group. Their children, their women, and the deep faith that takes them up to the mountains. The air gets chill, it gets colder. They're well protected. Some of them even use a stick to give them a little support. And this one track, there's no way that, oh, I'm going to overtake, I want to go a little faster. The mountains don't allow you to do that, because as you go up, your breath gets slower. You need to take deep breaths and take your time. The momentum keeps going. And the people in this group, the mothers, the children, they reach the top of the cave, the mountains. They go into that beautiful cave and look at the beautiful ice lingam, which is actually, this, they say, inside the cave has come through nature, naturally. The stalagmite has formed during the winter months, during nature, and it's just natural. They look at it, they pay their respects. They're up in the hills, the bitter cold, blowing, and their cheeks getting colder. Some of them are wearing gloves. And as they finish their paying their respects, they decide it's time to go back. Having a cup of tea and some snacks, which is available, shared by people who are living there during the season and providing for the pilgrims. They have their tea and snacks. Then one of them in the group is also a mountaineer and a soldier. He stops to listen and tells the group with whom he has come, I think we have to start heading back if you've all finished paying your respects. So many people in the group said, but why so soon? He said, we are in the mountains. The weather may change any time. And we have to reach the base camp well before dark. So the group, which is not used to these mountains, heed by what the soldier and the traveler with them tells them. And as they head back slowly, because coming down a mountain through a track is more difficult than climbing up the mountain. The soldier tells them, take it easy, be careful, because it is a slope going down, a steep slope. There are rumblings in the air, a little bit of thunder. The breeze gets colder. People start shivering a little, but they move down slowly, slowly and steadily. Again, the track is narrow. One side is the deep gorge, the other side is the mountain with thorny bushes and trees, and the landscape and the rocks are beautiful. They slowly trudge down with faith, some of them humming songs to keep the momentum going, some of them singing together, because when they're in a group and they're singing together, it sort of gives them that little added motivation to go down slower and take it one at a time, because you can't run down that slope. And as they keep going, it is dark. There are no trees now, no tree cover. It starts drizzling. A consistent drizzle keeps on coming. They put on their hoodies and their jackets. Some of them have umbrellas, but it's dangerous to open it because the strong breeze might just blow it away. So they just huddle with the hoodies around them, hands in their pocket, gloved hands, and they slowly and steadily start moving down. Again, there's a rumbling. There's a rumbling. The rain is getting a little more, and suddenly they hear more noises of as if something is coming from the mountainside. The soldier stops them, tells them, don't make a noise, because some of them had started screaming, wondering, what is that noise? What's going to happen? He cautions them. He says, shh. He has his ear to the mountains because he understood the mountain. And he says, halt. Don't move. Don't make a noise. They all stop. The group stops. Because the consistent rain had been pouring and pouring, and there were boulders and rocks which were loosened up, and they were tumbling down the mountainside. And these people were waiting. The rocks and boulders in front of their eyes seemed to be bouncing onto the track and going down deep into the gorge. Small little boulders and big boulders. The track was all wet. Some portion of the track went down with the boulder. The track became even more narrow. This rumbling stopped. The boulders moving down stopped for a minute. The soldier said, "Shh, don't make a noise, because when you make a noise, it sort of loosens more boulders in the mountains. The mountains can hear you. Don't be afraid. Walk down. Follow me, but at a faster pace. We have to hit the tree cover, because here it is all barren. If we hit a tree cover, it will help us. Otherwise, if we get stuck with this landslide coming down, the rain falling more, the torrential rain falling more, we may get stuck. And if we get stuck, it will be days before anyone even knows that we are here. There were no connectivity, there were no mobile phones that you could send an SOS. So some of the women in the group were feeling a bit nervous and scared. Some children were crying. He reassured them, don't worry, it's the mountains. And when this happens, the mountains also can take care of us if we follow the rules of nature. The rain was getting stronger, blowing onto their faces. Their fingers were numb. They couldn't feel their fingers and toes because it had chilled down consistently because of the rain. They moved down slowly. The soldier took hold of some of the children's hands and he said, come on, we'll make it. Come on, we are going to make it. And they moved. The horse was neighing. The horse was also scared when his foothold slipped because of the wet track. And slowly the group moved on forward, praying that, oh my God, let's hit the tree cover where we can have some safety. They moved on. Again, there was a rumbling. And they could see a huge lot of boulders, small and big, tumbling down the mountainside. Halt, said the soldier, taking precaution so that they don't get into the way of the boulders. They stop. The boulder in front of them is rolling, tumbling down into the gorge. They wait for a few seconds. And as soon as the rumbling and the boulder going down the mountain stops, the soldier said, we have to move a little more faster. Let's hit the tree cover. And the group goes quietly, silently down the mountains, each one chanting a song or praying to the gods, please God, let us reach the tree cover. It was so important to see trees. It was so important to reach the tree cover. And they trudged along the narrow track, which was more slippery now. The last few kilometers, they literally jogged down, following the soldier who led them on. And after about a good 3 kilometers of fast moving, they reached the tree cover. What is the tree cover? This part of the mountain had lots of trees. Fortunately, and they got under the tree cover and felt a relief because they were saved from further landslide. You know, where the mountains are barren, where the tree cover is not there, and it continues to rain in these high reaches in the Himalayas, the tumbling down of the soil and the rocks is just like it's sliding down the mountainside. They reached the tree cover, took a deep breath. The soldier took them under the trees and halted. He said, rest, take a deep breath. We still have to cover another 5 kilometers down. They all took a deep breath and were grateful that they had overcome the worst bit of that mountainside. The track here now started getting a little wider. Their hands were frozen, feet were frozen, cheeks were frozen, but a sigh of relief. They trudged on and covered the last 5 kilometers without even feeling their toes. And when they reached down the base camp, the base camp had already prepared, because they know when such rains come and the pilgrims are coming down, they need to be taken care of, because some of them are not used to such cold. So as they reach the base camp, there are people welcoming them with hot water in buckets to dip their fingers, because they can't even unbutton their jackets or coats. And some of them waiting with a hot cup of tea and soup. There are others who take care of the children and the mothers. And the soldier stands quietly by the side, feeling grateful that, yes, he could listen to the mountains. He understood the mountains, and he was able to bring this group of women, children, young and old, down the mountain tracks after they had paid their respects at the abode in the mountains, the beautiful abode in the mountains. And he, being a soldier and a mountaineer, loved the mountains. Somebody came and asked him, one little child came and asked him, "Did you hear the mountains? Did they tell you anything?" He smiled. He said, "Yes, I understood the mountains. I understood there's going to be a rumbling and tumbling. But yes, if we just learn to listen to the mountains, we can learn a lot, because nature gives us a lot." And when I said tree cover, I knew that is our safety zone. The little child smiled and said, "Thank you. Thank you, soldier, for bringing us down so safe." The women and children came and thanked him. He just had a smile as he took his rucksack and carried along further down to his home. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijaylakshmi. It's such a soothing story. The way your style is so soothing. You really gave us a workshop on mountaineering. It felt like, it almost could feel it cold, could feel the rain, so the next time I'm on a mountain, I know I need to look for the tree cover. Thanks a lot for that lovely story. Opening it up to the audience, any thoughts? Yes, Ed, please go ahead.
I love the mystery and the way your voice just went mysterious coming down that mountain. And I could really see the boulders and the fear that any of us would have, and how important it is to follow people that have some knowledge that you don't have, to really put your faith in something, even if you don't know much about it. And just coming down that mountain was so descriptive, going up also, but especially, I just love the adventure and the mystery. And what else did I have? Let's see. Oh yeah, and I really like the dialogue that you had. So we were really there. The soldier was talking to those people, so you brought those characters to life. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Anybody else? So Vijaylakshmi, this took me to my journey that I recently had end of December. Again, typically every mountain climb, every temple or divine space that we talk about, invariably there are two ways to get there. One long, easier, roundabout way, and one shorter and more ardent way. So we had gone the usual way, but we decided that we're going to come down. The back part is what we say, the back entry, the back exit.
Yeah.
And as we were coming out, this is about 5 of us in our family who were coming down together. And there was one family along with us, older parents, a couple of children, and the grandchild. And they were asking people around, is it safe to go down this path? We were told, because it's more wilderness. So it's as the day, it's easier when you're climbing up, because the day is still breaking up and it's going to get brighter. But when you're coming down, it's going to, get dark, and get dark really soon. It's just so quick, especially in the mountains. So I remember there was this group of family who were talking and asking others. And I said, you know what? Down this way, you can happily come with us. So that makes 10 of us. And so we took them along. And we were talking and we were chatting. And as we were climbing down, the older woman, she for some reason had a cramp in her leg and she was struggling. And her pace really slowed down. Because we had told her, because we told them, you know what, we are with you, it's safe, we are a bigger gang, come along. We couldn't leave her and go.
Correct.
And we were stuck as well because we were worried it's going to get dark. We've not been to that mountain before ourselves. And that was a tough half an hour that we went through trying to encourage her. We tried to send our father away, saying, you, two of you from our gang, go ahead. We'll come with these 5 people. And as we were coming down, we were trying to motivate her. We were trying to find, there's no way you can make her walk. She's really struggling. But thankfully, we found one of those doliwala. So in most of these places, we have
people
2
who
people carry. So there's a seat, makeshift seat that is made. And there are 2 people carrying 1 person on that. So thankfully, there were a few of those going down because it's a backside. As I said, they wouldn't get customers there. For some reason, they were there that day. And we quickly got hold of them and we made the auntie sit on that. And yeah, it was quite a journey, quite an adventure. So you took me back to memory lane. That happened just about a month ago.
It's very nice. In many of these places, you have either horses where people who can't walk can sit and go along the trek, or you have these dolis where people can carry you. Many people can. But this trek in this particular area, when if you go via Pelgam, it's a broader trek. I mean, there's a more broader space to walk up. But this Baltal area has a narrow track. The only advantage is you can do it in the same day.
In a single day.
Single day and come back by dusk. You can come back. And people who can do it prefer to go it this way. Or you go the other way, then you have to stay in those various camps. But it's an amazing experience, I believe, and really beautiful. I had the opportunity also to go on this trek, and it is amazing. I myself love the mountains. I grew up in a hill station, so I just love the mountains. And very recently, I went to a 15,500 feet Bumla Pass in Tawang, which is in the Arunachal Pradesh. And there also it's stark gray rock. And the only thing probably which helped me, as they say in the mountains, don't race, walk slowly. Probably the yoga helped because breathing becomes more difficult at 15,000 feet.
At the high altitude.
Yeah. And mostly the tourists who come, they tell them to wait a little at the lower heights so that they get used to the,
they acclimatize themselves to the climate,
But I was very fortunate that I was okay. I was able to walk. And you have to really, with the mountains, you can't take a chance. Take it easy. You're so humbled with the mountains. Yet it takes care of you, the mountains. As they say, like the faith, you have the Vaishno Devi, you have the Amarnath, you have the Kedarnath. Everywhere they say it's the mountains that take care of you if you understand the mountains. We are still, I think, as human beings, very small. And mountains can be intimidating, but yet they're so beautiful. I always believe that, the hills and the mountains have some beauty, some, untold mysteries in them. So this is it. And there's also a singing mountain in Dalhousie side, a mountain everyone says, does it really sing? It's called a singing mountain because the trees, the tall trees and the music of the winds, I believe you can hear it. So mountains have a lot of beauty and stories within them. Thank you.
Very intriguing and interesting. Thanks for that. Yes, Ed.
And when you talked about ice caves, if anyone's ever been to an ice cave, then you are transported to a land of magic, spiritual energy. So I don't know who has done that, but I used to do that in high school. We have Mount Rainier in Washington, and it's only about 9,000 feet, but you can go up you can drive your car up, and then you can hike up kilometers or so, and you come to
Yeah.
these ice caves,
Yeah.
and they're just unbelievable. So when you describe that and you have in the story, anyone who's done that, they
Yeah.
are automatically transported to
this
the world of
particular
wonder.
to this particular cave I have been many years ago when I was much younger. To this particular cave, which is covered with ice, snow all around, and the chill, and it's just hill. I mean, that's it. But it's amazing. It's amazing sight of nature. It's amazing to see that this stalagmite, which becomes like people believe in it, people go there every year in July, August because of their faith. But it's amazing. It's really something to see, to believe. Otherwise, we read about it, there are pictures about it, but when you're there, it's something quite different.
I understand. I mean, you call it faith, you call it divine, you call it nature, but there is one energy. There is some energy there which really, which
Yes.
everybody feels there,
Yes.
irrespective of what your thought process is or what you
Yeah.
believe or don't believe in. Yep.
But the nature's energy, the nature and environment, the energy that is there, like they say, is if you actually just sometimes sit quietly in nature, you do feel that energy, which is, like people say, no, go into nature, go into the forest. There is something there which gives you that little energy and joy, I can say, some happiness, etc.
This takes me back to a story that I listened to last CSF by Regina Rest, but I think this will go on and on. So I'm going to pause this here and move on to our next teller. Thank you so much, Vijaylakshmi, once again.
Thank you.
Our next teller is Bhargavi Kumaran from Bangalore. Let me just spotlight you, Bhargavi. Bhargavi has once again written the story. In fact, researched a lot and arrived at this fictional interpretation. So, Bhargavi, please introduce yourself fully and share a story with us.
Hi everyone, I'm Bhargavi Kumaran. I'm from Bangalore, but my native's Chennai. You must excuse my voice today, I'm a little sick. All right, I'm an author and I'm a computer scientist. This story is fictional, but I think it also starts at a personal experience. So I'm not really sure where I would categorize this. So the story really starts when I was 13 or 14. My parents, they had this habit of taking us on temple trips, right? Every year. So my father is native to this little village on the border of Tamil Nadu and Kerala, a nice little mountainous village. So when they said temple trip, I was not really sure what to expect, right? I thought, we'd go, we'd pray, we'd come back. But this trip was, it was really something else. For one, on the train ride there, we were prepared to worship one goddess. We bought a sari, we packed a pot, we packed enough rice, milk, ghee to make like the sacrificial offering there. We make pongal at whatever temples we go to. It's a sweet. It's made with jaggery milk and rice, and it's it used to like thank the gods or appease the gods depending on which way you see it. But when we got there, we rested and we all got ready to go to the temple, right? Everyone was dressed. And when we got there, I was very surprised to see that there was no temple, what you'd expect, like a stone structure. There were no pillars, there were no roofs. There was just a very tall stone in like a corner of a street, like in a residential street. There were houses on both sides, and there was just a big tall stone. On any other day, I would have just walked past that stone and not even noticed it. But on that day, there was a priest standing next to that stone, and he was like washing the stone with like a lot of love. You could see that he really cared. So we got there and we set everything up. People got, they got firewood, they got like dried coconut leaves to light a fire to make pongal. We bought the pot out and everything. And when we were there, we discovered that the stone there symbolized not one god, but two goddesses, both of whom were sisters. And even though we had not really known that, my father's cousin also, they decided to join us, and they also brought another sari, another pot, and everyone was they were very overjoyed because now there were two pots for both goddesses. And as the day went on, I've never been a very religious person, but I started feeling like there was someone else along with us, right? There was this sort of restless feeling in the air that I cannot explain any other way. Like it was fairly normal for us to go to a temple and make pongal, but there we were sitting on a stone slab outside someone's house. It's called a Chennai. And we were sitting and chatting, waiting for the adults to finish it. And there was just this restless energy in the air that I wanted to go and I wanted to see what it was about. So we go and they do the aarti. They start worshipping the goddess, and what happens is my father's cousin begins to dance. He's a teacher. He's a very like poised man normally, so this is not very in character for him. And I was very scared. And I was hiding behind my mother, and he starts talking about how glad he is. In words that I've never heard him use. He was like, it was almost as though he was possessed. And they calm him down, they take us away. And the next day, I sit my father down and I ask him what it was all about. Turns out, in the house my grandfather grew up in, and his father before him, and his father before him, a couple generations ago, there was a person who worked for the zamindar. A zamindar is they're what I guess you could call them colonial era landowners, right? People of a particular caste who owned land that other people worked on. So this man who lived in our house, he worked for the zamindar of that place as an accountant. One day the zamindar was doing his rounds and he comes across this man's house. This man is said to have two very beautiful daughters, right? Who are sitting outside plaiting each other's hair. So the zamindar looks at these girls and he's like, they're very pretty. You should send them to me. And the man, he doesn't know what to do because you can't really say no to someone you work for. And in some weird, who knows what went on through his mind. And in an inexplicable way, he decided the easiest thing to do at that moment would be to get rid of the problem, his daughters. So that night, he decided to dig up a pit outside his house, and he calls one daughter and he's like, it's very dark and I need to finish digging this pit. Will you bring me a lamp? And our daughter, she brings a lamp inside and goes inside the pit to give, hold it up so her father can see. He just pushes her down and buries both sisters in the pit. And while they're being buried alive, it said that the girls they were crying and they were screaming for help, but nobody wanted to interfere because by all accounts, life with the zamindar would have been much worse. And in like the last breath, they cursed that, for generations to come, the family would have no daughters. And if they did have daughters, the daughters would not lead very happy lives. And they died. And nobody really worshipped them or nobody really remembered them until my father's cousin discovered this, because he went to one of those soothsayers back in the village, and he was like, I'm having trouble finding my daughter a husband. And he tells him the story and he wants him to appease these gods. And that experience really got me, it really bore its way inside my head. And every time if you visited the south of Tamil Nadu, you know that around every street corner, you could see these stones. Some of them have temples. They look like, what you'd expect a temple to look like. And instead of the idol in the sanctum, there's a tall stone. Or other times there's just like a thatched hut with a straw roof, and under there's multiple stones, right, that you worship as though they were statues of gods. And before then, I'd never really paid attention to them, but after hearing this particular story, I started noticing them everywhere. And then I started researching, I started talking to people. I was like, what god, what story? And it led me to the conclusion that these stones, you can call them hero stones or, memory stones. These stones were really humans who were deified through tragedy or very grotesque deaths, right? And while it might appear sort of barbaric, I think in like a time where preserving history was only the written word even was only really available to people of a certain class, there's really no way to keep resistance or memories alive without fear, which is what these gods induce. And as I progressed through my research, I found that these gods have certain really human qualities, right? And having lived in a city, I don't think, I mean, I'm connected to Chennai, but I don't think I really have the connection with my land. There are a lot of people who actually live off the land feel. For example, there's stories of a god who, who ran away to the mountains because he was wronged, and he can't be moved into the village because moving him into would invite destruction, and people are scared to do that, but they still feel a sense of belonging with the god so much that they fight like the elements. Even if it's raining, even if it's a storm, they still go and they worship him where he is. And I mean, at first glance it might look like they're scared of him, but I feel if you delve deeper, it's a way to remember they're dead, right? It's a way to remember how they died and why they died and what they died for. In the same way, the stories of goddesses who were in the forest, and you have to go inside during temple festivals. The entire village goes into the forest, and they have to sort of like appease the goddess and bring her back. And it's very linked to the land. In forest, there's lurking danger, and to symbolize that danger, they use these stories of people who these things actually happen to people. And as I carried on, I also found out that a lot of these traditions were also rooted in in what happened to these people, right? So I was when I was writing this book, I started doing this little experiment where I took pieces of news from our time and try to turn them into traditions, like how they would be preserved in this way, in through deification. And the story I'm about to share right now is based off two pieces of real news that happened in 2022. The first article is about lower castes being denied access to a village well, forcing them to trek long distances for readily available water. And again, this is very characteristic of something that happens in a desert, right? A lot of their stories, a lot of their gods, a lot of it centers around water, because that is a commodity that is not very readily available to them. And the second incident is about a person, like a sorry, what do you call it? A funeral procession being stopped because people of a certain caste took offense at the fact that people they considered beneath them are allowed to use the same cremation facilities that they use. And these are both real stories that happened in our time in Tamil Nadu, right? And if we were to preserve these incidents without writing them or recording them, right? Stories are the only way. Once the original accounts die out, the probability of our story remaining unsullied goes down, and I think that's where fear comes in. To illustrate this point, I've taken like the the liberty to fictionalize story based on these events. All right. A story starts in a little village called Paruvur with a man called Rasu, who lives a life that can only be described as simple, but it suits him just fine. He works breaking stone at the quarry every day. It's thankless and it's physically demanding, but he can't fault it because it's stable. It's a job. His entire life can be fit into the one room he shares with his wife. But what more could anyone want, right? Every day at dinner, his wife Varivo, she'd pour out the news that she hears throughout the day, and Rasu never had any way to know what is coming. It could be about caste clashes one day and about their baby that was due the next. And although he didn't grasp everything he told him, he let it wash over him like a cold babbling stream. It was a day like any other. When the story starts, he wakes up before the sun, and Variva already has the porridge ready for him. She sends him off with instructions to bring back turmeric because she has to go fetch water today, and her leg hurts, right? Because she's pregnant. Turmeric is the farthest thing from his mind, though, when he's breaking stone at the quarry, right? It's a very monotonous, very hard thing to do. You just raise the thing over and over and over again, and everyone around you is doing the same thing, and there's only the clank of your tools and the grunts of your colleagues, especially in the hot, unforgiving sun. So he was almost grateful when a supervisor comes to get him. And even though he knows when a supervisor comes to interrupt your workday, it can't mean anything good, but he's almost grateful for the break. To his utter surprise, there is no verbal lashing. He goes inside the supervisor's office and he finds his neighbor's little son. the boy's face is like streaked with tears, and he pulls on Rasu's arm. He's like, let's go, you have to leave with me right this second. And despite like Rasu's annoyance at like, his wages being cut, he's like, okay, let's go. As the two walk home, Rasu's like, in his head, he plays out multiple scenarios. He's like, is it my mom? But if it was my mom, my nephew would have come gotten me, not this dude. Is it your grandmother? What's happening? He like runs through a list of all his like sick and old frail relatives. And it's like it takes all of his energy to just like reason his mind out of it, saying, it can't be my mother, it can't be my aunt and all of that. It is only when they almost turn the corner into a street and he sees turmeric strung up in the corner shop that he's reminded of Vadi. He's like, he pulls the boy's fingers off him and he's like, keep walking, I'll just buy some turmeric and I'll be right back. But the boy breaks into tears, and Rasu tries to like console him. He's like, you go, your my wife Vadi, she asked for it, your sister asked for it, I will get it. But at the mention of his wife's name, the boy starts bawling. So Rasu like breaks into a run as it like dawns on him that his wife must have lost the baby. But as he turns to his house, he sees a lot of men milling about outside, but they like fall silent when he draws closer. He scans all the men present, like what are they doing here? And none of them's like willing to meet his eyes. And his eyes like lock onto his brother-in-law, who's just like in a corner and his eyes are bloodshot. And Rasu can suddenly no longer find in himself the energy to which, like, with which to walk inside his home. He just brushes past the men in his house. He's like left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, and just opens the door to the sound of wailing. The form that is sprawled on a mat like in the center of the room is like it sucks up all the oxygen left. With the first thing you see is her feet with two big toes tied together, and the form could not hold a candle to the wife he'd left behind that body. The faded pink saree she had worn was like marred with bruises now in the color of blood. And the wails sort of seem to fade into the background as he goes near her, and it's like the cold like in her body is leaching out into the air. His hands that are like so strong from years of backbreaking work are just trembling like leaves when they touch her. And he sits back wordlessly, and just people talking. There's just like snippets of her last few hours just floating around. She'd gone out to fetch water with the other women. That much Vasu already knew. They'd all been making their way back from the well with pots of water when a rock of all things decided to play God. A simple stumble, miscalculated step to recover from the stumble, and all was lost. The impact had shattered the pots and injured Variable. But before anybody could react, a vehicle had materialized onto the screen as if it was driven by like fate itself. And there was, there's really no need to complete the story. The disfigured body inside was, it says enough. And Rasu closes his eyes and he's just lying there. But when he wakes back up, the sun's already up. His brothers lead him back out, and they shave his head, they get him ready, and he just watches his wife's last rites as though it's like some part of a horribly tragic movie. It's not happening to him. But before long, they just take whatever's left of her and they move forward with him at its helm, being like pushed forward. On the path to the crematorium, a group of strange men obstruct their way, and as much as he's straining to hear, he can't make out the argument. And just when things seem poised to escalate into violence, Vadiva's father steps forward and he brokers peace. They arrive at the crematorium, and they allow him one final look before they put a what do you call it, a disc of dried piece of cow dung, and they obscure her face. Then they give him the torch to light the pyre with, and he only has to touch the ghee-soaked wood, and it was all over. And on the way back home, Rasu's cousin, a known rebel, he's like lamenting. He's like, loud enough for him to even, reach past Rasu's beef. He's like, who gave them ownership of the roads? If they'd only let our women use the village well, why would still be allowed? We can't live also, we can't die also. He's very angry. And even though people are like, not the time, not the place, Rasu's head starts to reel with realization. He'd ignored the revolution for stability, for his simple life, but it had caught up with him. And days or weeks after then, like time does not really mean anything. When Vari was, ashes were brought home and the lamp lit and everything, he kept replaying Paruti, his cousin's words, and he escapes like his brothers and his mother's watchful eyes, and he storms off to the quarry. Except he can't bring himself to walk into work. So he goes around the back where people, gather, they drink, they make illegal alcohol, all the societal evils gather there. And he goes there and he picks up old tools. He picks up like a piece of long stone, and he just keeps pounding away at the stone until it resembles something of a human, right? And every day, all day he works, all night he sits and he thinks, he brings to mind Variba's fingers, what they look like, what her neck look like, what her nose look like. And it takes months, or maybe it even takes years. People start to think he's insane, but finally he's fashioned something that resembles the woman Variba once was, even if to nobody but himself. And whoever comes near him, he pelts the intruder with stones, right? And when she is ready, he just lies on top of her and lets fate take whatever's left of him. Today, present day, in the Varivaman temple, devotees carry pots of water into the forest surrounding the shrine. They line up for the privilege for pouring water on the stone, and all the empty pots are loaded into a cart and dragged off to light fires for the the pongal and whatever they cook in the temple. And although the story and its corresponding rituals are fictional, they draw very closely from existing themes. I think one of the key differentiators would be the incorporation of fantastical elements to allow people to exercise their creativity without really spoiling the story. And these stories again are very deliberately wrong and roundabout to allow for the inclusion of adding masala by storytellers while preserving the central and real incidents. I think that really concludes the story I was trying to tell.
Thank you, Bhargavi. I think that was quite deep and really interesting, the way you spoke about what you experienced and how it got you thinking, how you figured out what things were, you researched on that, and that's brought you to a fictional story, which is actually, if you build a temple somewhere and say this is what it is, people will believe it and start doing it. Literally, So I like the way you've seen the journey of how these stories about these small little temples and small little statues would have come about. Amazing work on that. I think we are just way beyond 12:30. So I will be willing to take only one feedback if anybody wants to share it. I'm really sorry about this, but we really need to wrap it up. Any thoughts, any one person? Okay, I guess, yes, Jeff, please go ahead.
I really enjoyed the story, but I have two suggestions. Watch the uhs. One of the first things I learned as a storyteller is watch the uhs, and you had over 200.
Yes.
And slow down slightly. Your story will be a lot more effective if you slow the pace down a bit more.
Okay.
Sometimes you were going so fast it was getting ahead of me. So just slow down a little and you'll have a lot more effect.
Okay.
Otherwise, it was really good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for that feedback. So once again, thank you, everybody. An amazing session. Lots of personal stories. Lots of stories inspired by personal experiences and self-written stories as well. Wonderful session. I will be here again hosting another session next Friday at 6:30 Indian Standard Time. So until then, of course, we have lots of workshops still running for the rest of the day. So enjoy the day and have a lovely time. Thank you so much for joining us today.